Greetings, friends and fiends. It is I, Chronicler. On this day, it is my pleasure to bring to you the voices of madness behind the members of Creepy Spaghet. Welcome to Whispers from the Reliquary.
Welcome everyone. I still don't know what I'm doing. I'm joined here today by both the Overseer and Harbinger. And while I was editing the audio for the last video, I realized how many times I said which turns out to be about 70% of the video. So you're welcome for me removing all those for you, because I hated it.
Well, now I know that this is not live, thank you.
We are recording right now, and there I go saying again. I'm going to try and stop myself from doing that as we continue these, because that annoys me.
We should get you like a electric shock collar for docs and just hand me over the control, and every time you say I'll just click on it.
Well, I figured I'll just draw out words instead.
Now you're gonna sound like
Well, that's what I sounded like before. Instead, what I'm going to sound like is... So, I was talking about the... Oh, yeah. Jamie, pull that up. Nothing? No reaction? Alright. So, since we didn't really get any comments last time asking questions, there's really nothing other than us to bullshit about.
I miss completely all that.
That's fair. Multilingual bastard.
Oi! My brain is bigger than yours.
So, what I was saying is, since that there were no comments last time asking questions on our previous video, so there's not much for us to do other than to bullshit.
I mean,
I'm saying there's no fan questions.
I'm still a fan.
Same.
I mean,
I like me.
I'm not a fan, but I do this for money.
What money? Who's paying you?
Wait, who's making the $1,000 deposit monthly then?
Yeah, let me know.
I think
I wanna have a talk.
I think I got us in trouble, boys.
Funded by the cartel.
The IRS is coming back for those $140.
The IRS wants our ass.
I mean, obviously they do.
I mean, technically, that's why we haven't opened the Patreon yet. Is because to have a YouTube with multiple people on it receiving payment for it, you need to actually have a business license. If it's a solitary person doing everything, then they don't need a business license.
I mean, they don't need to know that there's multiple people.
Well, it's obvious because we kind of talk about it all the time.
We're just guests, everybody. No need to tiptoe Uncle IRS.
Yeah, we've just been lying this whole time. We're just gaslighting our audience.
Hell yeah.
It's really just been me this whole time, dealing with my split personalities.
Obviously, like, you know how to do voices. We are just, like, here and there. You purposely learn different languages to, like, imitate this character Harbinger, which is a multilingual person.
Yeah, one of my demons is a bilingual Latino person.
Latinx, please.
Latinx, yeah. Latino. Would you rather me say Latina?
Who came up with that stupid thing?
Someone who's not Latino?
More than likely. I bet you they are, like, whiter than, I don't know, Snow White. Well, no, the Snow White's no longer white. Damn it!
See, that's the other thing, is, like, who else would fall for a trick of eating a poisoned apple than, like, an ignorant white bitch?
In German, we're the worst of it.
Well, isn't it originally a German story?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the Grimm brothers.
Yeah, because a lot of the Grimm brother stories originated in, like, German folklore.
Yeah, I'm like, Look at them Germans, even using poisonous things in ancient times. It must be like a cultural trope or something.
Yeah, but that's not like modern times. I mean, what's that one comedian that's in Suicide Squad, Flula?
I think it is.
Yeah, they're great. They're like your wacky German uncle.
The like German. The thing with Germans is that at least the ones I have known, they are either stereotype A or stereotype B. Super serious, nothing makes them fun, highly intelligent and intellectual, and really cool to hang around, but you will certainly never make them chuckle. Or B, completely mad, batshit insane.
Uh-huh.
There's no
That's
point in
correct.
between.
I don't know. It's definitely. We were talking about this before about different types of cultural differences. But like a lot of things change between region to region depending on where you are in the world. One thing that doesn't change though is batshit insanity. That's usually always the same. It just has separate categories of whether it's like homicidal insanity, self-destructive insanity, alien abduction type insanity, just straight up schizophrenia. Like the radio is trying to give you a mission to go murder a public official.
Are you telling me that Mission Impossible organization does not exist, and that guy having talking through the payphone was just in my mind?
It's actually been confirmed that Mission Impossible was just a mass hallucination. And if you believe in it, then you're schizophrenic.
It's all in Tom Cruise's head.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
why
that's-
that's why he can pull the stunts that he does.
That's just public fact. Believe me, I'm a YouTuber.
8 out of the 10 voices in my head said so.
Exactly. And I was aware of 9 of them. But as far as like the creepypastas coming out, we didn't put one out last week. We did put out the first episode of the podcast. But honestly, that was mainly due to time constraints on my end. I had a lot of things I was dealing with at the moment. There's hopefully going forward, we're going to try and go back to alternating it where we were doing series and one-offs, because I've mostly been doing one-offs.
Well,
And we don't want.
We have
Well-
a small deepest part of the ocean series. Like it was a small one, 2-parter, but I wouldn't
Yeah,
call it a
but at
one-off.
the same time, compared to no, Deep Ocean wasn't a one-off. It was a 2-parter, but compared to the others that we've been posting, we've been mostly doing one-offs. The only other
Yeah.
thing was I'm a correctional officer at an underground prison, but we had already done that story previously. We just put out the complete version of it, which
Mhm.
for everyone that doesn't know, whenever we finish a story, we put out a complete version of it, and it's all in one playlist. You can also find it in that specific story playlist as well. That
For all
way
of you-
you know where to find it.
For all of you masochists that like to hear over 3 hours of recording in one go.
And we don't have 3 hours yet.
I mean, we have been like close to it.
We definitely have been close to it. There's the furthest we've gone is 2 hours and 12 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Overseer, you haven't talked this entire time.
Push to talk is extremely inconvenient when trying to talk over to people.
Well, yes, it is, but it's also easy when we don't have a furnace blaring in the background.
I suppose beggars can't be choosers then.
You can like you're not allowed to be warm during recordings, okay?
Or dogs barking. Looking at you, Harbinger.
Looking at you, Harbinger, right in the
Wait, I
eyeball.
closed my door. They are outside. That's as much as I can do.
I don't trust it.
Overseer, thoughts?
Yee.
And that has been a word from the Overseer. Back to you, Harbinger.
Well, looking at the weather today, I can tell you certainly that we're not going to be having a storm last so late, but I can tell you right now that the south of the American states are going to have a really bad time for the next couple following days. Back at you. Oh, wait, there's no here.
Fuck. Who?
Wait. Push.
Fuck anyone named.
I mean, I don't know, but screw it.
You know what? Everyone, if you know a make sure to tell them, fuck you today.
Yeah, fuck that guy.
Yeah, they really do deserve it. Just for... God, I'm so upset.
Especially if they're left-handed.
I mean, that's awkwardly specific, but...
Well, here's the thing. Like, think about it right now. Who the fuck is even left-handed anymore? Like, grow the fuck up.
Please grow the fuck up if you're left-handed.
I mean, I am of the idea that schools should have kept tying down the left-handed kids to the bench and forcing them to use the right hand. Like, that was just part of nature. If you use your left hand, you're clearly inferior.
Well, part of what nature used to be is if you use your left hand, a nun would come into your school, even if you weren't in like a religious school, with a ruler and just whap the shit out of your hand.
Yeah, and the best part is nobody even told her that you were left-handed. She just senses
She
it.
just like automatically showed up.
Yeah, it was like a homing missile. She'd walk in and whip the shit out of your hand with a ruler.
She's
I'm
the
not gonna lie,
champ.
that sounds like an SCP story. Like, the unforgiven nun.
Is she,
It does sound like an SCP.
is she the chancla of you Americans?
Kinda,
Yeah.
just specifically for left-handed people,
Yeah, only for left-handed people, and
which would make her an SCP.
I mean, just due to the fact that she has no prior knowledge of you or anybody you associate with, she just has a sense. When you were left-handed, she comes and she beats you. It's almost like following the steps to a ritual that eventually gets a demon to kill you.
Well, that, and she's also present in every school system in the United States of America at the same time.
She is literally everywhere and nowhere at once. Now, if you are a writer listening to this and you understand SCP stories, I highly recommend you adding this to the list.
She has been an enigma for everyone in the US for a long time now.
Her name is Muriel.
She
Of
also
course.
goes by Agnes.
Let me guess. And does she has like a pink dog?
No.
Oh, God, she's a nun. What are
Yeah,
you, sacrilegious?
they're not allowed to have things.
Right, no. So her name is Muriel Agnes. Miss Muriel Agnes, actually. Sister Muriel Agnes.
Yeah, Sister Muriel Agnes. She is equipped with her deadly ruler of punishment.
She's kind of a...
She's kind of a bitch.
Jesus Christ!
This is the best SCP I've ever heard.
There's gonna be an
Read that
actual
creepypasta.
there's gonna be an actual Muriel Agnes somewhere that is an actual nun, and she's gonna hear this and she's gonna be like, "What have I done?"
Well, hopefully, this encourages her to
listen to this.
Well, it would also encourage her, hopefully, to stop her cunt ways.
You will be surprised of what nuns do when people think that, like, when they know that nobody's watching.
Okay, nuns are mean as fuck. Like,
Superior mothers are. Nuns in general tend to be kind because
well,
they
they're
used
supposed to be.
like those that have been on the system for a while now are not kind, but just like fresh nun. Well, I don't know if fresh nuns is come get your fresh nun. We'll sell them by the piece.
Right from the ground, fresh nun.
But I know that recruits
Also confirmed.
if that's-
You can
that's a word.
find Sister Agnes growing in the turnip fields. So
In Flanders fields?
watch out by produce stands. You might find one of her advisors standing around.
in Flanders fields when puppies grow.
Is her.
But yes, she grows like lettuce. That's how she is summoned onto this earth.
I will summon you, Sister Muriel Agnes, with this head of lettuce.
And
That's
then a
what we'll do.
ruler just bursts out of the top of the head of lettuce.
What if I only have a kale?
No, you don't want kale.
No, then that's how you don't summon anything bad. It's just like a bunch of vegans and stuff, and it just gets really uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's like a bee's nest. Whenever you try and summon something with a piece of kale, it just bursts out with a bunch of miniature vegans that slowly grow into human size as they ravage over vegetable fields.
All right,
I
then
just tell you how
if we
good
can
it is
only
to be
use
vegan.
lettuce,
Like,
then I need to know Romaine or Iceberg?
Romaine, you absolute dope.
Yeah, come on. We're not trying to summon the Titanic, alright? Leave the icebergs out of this.
But what if I want Italian lettuce, though?
You didn't ask, because it's romaine and romaine only.
Italian lettuce is literally just tomatoes.
No, that's water.
Well, their salad is pizza, right? It's got your dairy, it's got your vegetables, it's got your meat, it's the entire food pyramid.
It has carbs in it, it has protein.
Before you just said carbs, not carbs.
I said carbs.
Yes, it is quite publicly known that Italian people eat cars.
I mean, probably after World War II.
Yeah,
It puts that motor oil really puts hair on your chest.
Volkswagen.
Not only in your chest, if you know what I mean.
Well, either way, we're supposed to ramble about some bullshit. So, Harbinger,
Yeah.
how long have you been running an illegal fighting ring?
A couple of years now. The cops have been onto me for a couple of times. You just like slip in some money and they'll leave you alone. Sometimes they will even come on and join you, like, you know, typical Latin America stuff.
Right. And usually, I heard that you're actually being part of the foreclaimer of fighting rings, mainly because you don't differentiate between species. You allow humans and animals inside. So it was the first time I was able to see a rooster fight with a pit bull, as well as with a homeless man coming in.
Okay. I need to clarify that. The pit bull was of the homeless man. He thought it was a dog fight, but he was in the background. So he allowed the pit bull to get into it. But when the cops started to beat up the crap out of the pit bull, he thought it was a smart idea to intervene, and then everybody thought that it was just like interspecies fighting as it was some WWE crap. But it was just a big misunderstanding, and the cop won at the end of the...
Well, that makes me sad, because then the homeless man will get some chicken.
Oh, no. The homeless man died of salmonellosis.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Honestly, though, my favorite fight was the homeless man versus the trash bag. Now, that was a fight to truly be remembered.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So I need to clarify that as well.
He was really after that mayonnaise jar that trash bag had.
No, so I need to clarify that as well. After the salmonellosis kicked in, the homeless man was in a seizure-like state, and the trash bag was the only way we could keep them off from the rest of the gang.
Is it bad?
Blame it on the seizure. We all know that it was crack induced, simply because he told us it was.
It's bad because this entire story just goes off, immediately making me think of another creepypasta that we still have to read.
Oh,
Which one?
Okay, I need to know how homeless man, salmonellosis, seizure, and crack induced leads you to a creepypasta.
It's TOD, Overseer. And it mainly reminds me of it because of a bunch of random bullshit fighting to the death.
That sounds more like an anime pitch, not an actual creepypasta.
Well, it kind of is, but at the same time, like, it brings in that horror aspect to it of these people having supernatural abilities. Not straight up superpowers, but more like curses that they've learned how to weaponize.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really like really bad curses that essentially fuck them up from living a normal life. But they've learned how to manipulate them in such a way to harm others. So they use it in these death matches.
Okay. It's certainly interesting. I think I'm gonna enjoy to edit that one.
I think that the curse of the homeless man definitely would have been for the fact that they are homeless. I think that was their biggest curse that they learned how to weaponize due to learning everything that they did while they were homeless. Which is, of course, strangling chickens and beating dogs with trash bags. So I think that's pretty impressive. Overseer, if we're talking, still can't hear you.
Remember, you have a push to talk.
Push to talk. I talk when push.
Yes. You went silent for a bit again, so...
Sorry, I'm trying to invite random narrators.
Well, we sent the 2 invites yesterday,
Yeah,
which was very short notice.
Yeah, I know, but this is like, I'm reaching for the top shelf. I'm tired of this.
Oh,
So it is one of those days, huh?
it definitely is, especially accompanied by the dog barking in the background.
I'm not sure
Push.
whose dog that is.
Push to talk.
You're definitely not sure whose dog that is?
Yeah, no clue. Certainly not mine.
It's probably the recording app we have going on right now. It's probably their dog.
Oh, more than likely.
It's the Discord server dog.
It's either that or the ring fighting has already started, and I'm missing it.
See, it just again.
Curator?
I feel like I've just joined a PlayStation lobby for Fortnite, and all I can hear in the background is the kid that joined, who's just here, has his parents arguing in the background, a fan blowing at all times, dogs barking, and they just get on, and they're just like, "Where are we dropping?"
So the classic Latino online player.
Yes, I didn't want to say it, but since you're the Latino here, you're allowed to.
I mean, the things I'm allowed to get on for just being not white, it's impressive.
Oh, I know. This way we have some representation.
Oh, so that's why I'm here now. Not because of my quality of editing.
No, it's definitely
not
the
at all.
representation. It's
It's
definitely
just
the
the color of your
representation.
skin.
I have to be inclusive, right?
Yeah. We have to be inclusive. It has nothing to do with your merits or the fact that you can speak multiple languages or how intelligent you are. It's mainly because you different skin color, so that means that you can get away with shit that we can't. And by having you here, it qualifies us to get away with saying shit that we normally wouldn't be able to say.
So
Because that's how society works now.
you're getting away with things by proxy.
Exactly, but we don't need to get into politics right now.
I mean, if you want us to rant for a bit, that's one way to do it.
Yeah, we definitely don't need to get into that because it's just annoying and it makes me angry.
To be fair, Chronicler, what is there that does not make you angry?
Wizards of the Coast recently, they earned my respect back.
Oh?
Yeah, you didn't... Okay, so... For those that don't know, with Wizards of the Coast, they're the guys that own Dungeons & Dragons. They've been tasked with the New Age players joining the game to change their lore because they thought some of the previous lore was quote-unquote racist between these fantasy races. I mean, these people that were claiming it was racist were comparing people of color to things like orcs and drow, but that's not what they want to touch up on. What they were talking about was them changing the lore behind orcs and drow because they were quote-unquote all evil races. When
Inherently evil was the wording.
Right, which that hasn't been the case since AD&D 2nd edition back from the 80s. They just didn't want to actually look at the real information. They just read the surface level stuff and made their decision from there. But Wizards of the Coast was talking about changing their lore, and it turns out they came out with a statement saying they're not doing that. That's R.A. Salvatore that is changing the lore within the Forgotten Realms lore, but it's specific to his book series. The actual lore of the main game is not shifting with that. So they earned a little bit of respect from me from not bowing to the new players coming in. And completely being...
The sad part is that it's not even new players most of the time. Like,
it's just a loud minority.
Yeah, like, would they even play? I kind of get it, but they don't. Like, it's people that just shows up, mess up the things for some brownie internet points, and then walks off to the next franchise to do the same thing again.
Yeah, well, they're in the same groups, and they're always talking about, oh, I haven't played before, but I want to. Or they talk about how I'm just here for the D&D memes, I don't actually play. And it's like, come on.
I'm here for the podcast.
Yeah, like, it's all these D&D podcasts, which if you guys are interested in us starting a D&D podcast, just comment below. But it's these...
We're getting someone to comment.
Yeah, right?
Tough crowd out there.
Tough crowd. Especially from the first video, over 100 viewers and no comments. Did get a couple likes, though.
Question: did they linger in the podcast though? Did you check the metrics to see if they actually stayed and hear the whole thing?
Most likely they didn't. I can look at that right now. Because generally, our like actual watch time, people usually stay for about 10 minutes through our videos before they get off. But at least they stayed for the 10 minutes.
That's the sad reality of YouTube.
Yeah, it's the audience retention. Let's see. For the first podcast, audience retention, only 1% of the 140 people actually listened to the end of it.
So, to the 14 people that heard the full podcast...
Less than that.
Oh yeah, you said 1% or 10%?
It's 1%.
To the 1.4 people that listened to the podcast, thank you, and we'll give you a prize if we ever meet you. And it's gonna be like out of the podcast from Overseer.
We can't promise that.
I said if we ever meet
anything.
Yeah, don't ask us for anything other than content.
You will get nothing but disappointment.
I can send nudes.
We will avert our eyes like seeing a homeless man on the street.
That makes one of us.
So that's what that look means every time you come to pick me up.
Yeah, that pure look of disgust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was because of the shower.
Well, that too. But
here's
the thing. We can solve most of those things pretty easily. We just feed the homeless to the homeless. And then we'll see homeless rates drop exponentially, but we'll also see like universal starvation also drop.
So what you're telling me now is that Las Vegas Beach is now open market for my people.
Yes, Soylent Greens. So it's made of people. Just make it out of homeless people. There's also I'm not telling anyone to go commit crimes right now. I want to preface this.
If you want to do it, then do it.
I'm not telling anyone to commit any acts of crimes or violence. However, if you are homeless, it would be super easy for you to not be homeless and be bed down with 3 hots and a cot if you just went to jail.
I mean,
it's a free ride.
It is known that people do
3 hots and a cot, no taxes, no bills, all the sex you do and don't want. I mean, what more could you need?
But, yeah, anyway, back to other things.
Overseer, what's new?
My existential dread has set in.
I mean,
nifty.
Yeah.
Tell them I said hi. It's been a while. Yeah, that's usually the response we get.
Yeah. To be fair, that's the response we get to many things.
Sounds like someone's playing D&D with someone they don't get along with.
What?
Yeah.
I like you guys.
Well, there was we've had a couple occurrences of moments.
I mean, yes, but that doesn't mean I don't like you.
No, not from your end. I'm talking about same game's previous players who we had in there. One of them would just immediately blow up at the Overseer here the second he joined the call, and then Overseer would just laugh at him.
Is that the one that his game was being ruined?
Yeah, it is. And Overseer, please feel free to talk about it. That little topic.
So, do you guys in particular have a creepypasta author? So, like, it could be like a no sleep author or just someone on a Reddit, some sort of subreddit. Do you have a preferred author? If so, like, who is the author and what story would you like from them?
Like, what kind of story?
Like, whatever story they wrote. Like, what story do you like by them, I should say. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, I'd have to go with what I said last time. With Wendigo and Accounts from a Lonely Broadcast Station. One of my favorite creepypastas, and one of the few that I've seen that's been extraordinarily written. However, I also don't want to forget the ones that we've done that have been really, really good, because I usually look forward to reading their stories whenever I do narrate them.
Right.
As far as they go, that, I would have to say the Jesse Clark is really good. They're the ones that did, The Deepest Part of the Ocean is Not Empty. We've done a couple by them, and they've all been generally really good. They also did What Happens When the Stars Go Out, as well as plenty of others.
It's a beautiful, beautiful story. That one put some feels in me.
It really did. There's also, our old friend from the I'm an English teacher in Korea, G Dokum.
Yeah, boy, G Dokum. Oh,
And
I love that guy.
really great guy. Really just awesome to interact with. Very polite, very pleasant. Great interactions. There's also, we did one, specifically, it was from Tobias Malm from Odd Directions. That was a really good one, which was, I lost my son in a freak accident 20 years ago, and now he's a king.
Oh, yeah, that was a decent story.
Yeah, the premise was, it was like a take on a childlike aspect, and they twisted it and demented it, and I really enjoyed that. I thought that was very interesting. It was like a demented version of Chalk Zone.
It is such a weird way to look at it, but I totally get it.
It also reminded me of a Rick and Morty episode.
Chalk Zone and Rick and Morty could easily be relatable.
I don't think that I would be fitting for answering that, as I'm not familiar with how authors just yet, but I am really good stories so far. However, I can do say that there are specific things that I look into stories, no matter like how they're written, and as Chronicler mentioned earlier, like I speak multiple languages. Languages seems to be one of my professional inclinations, and I always look for structure in the story, the way they write their stuff, and gives Chronicler the I want to say free will of just like do things, of like the way he will put the intonations and whatnot. One clear example of that is Deepest Part of the Ocean, the first one. It was so good because it could have been read in so many ways, just like a calm, suspenseful narration, as a really dramatic, action-centered like story, or even as just a tale from Jules Verne back in the days, which that to me just shows the versatility and the clarity that the story is structured as. I think that's really great, because that to me tells me that they write these stories with the intent of not only somebody reading them, but actually narrating them. When you like give that freedom to the person that's going to be narrating, it's really good. It talks about really good as to whom write them. As to when you don't, as if you're writing like a novel or a short story, where you're just expecting someone to glance with the eyes, never say it out loud, and you define things very specific. That's are the little niches to me that say like, okay, I can tell this is really good, and the author is really great with what it does.
Yeah, so essentially what you're saying is you like stories that allow narrators the widest range possible to do what they want as far as the interpretation of the story.
Yep. Like, I literally like the stories where you can go, oh, the author meant this, when the author in reality is like, I have no clue.
I'm gonna have to agree.
Like, when they are able to sell that, it's when you go, okay, I get it. And funny enough, that is a trait that became really popular with Edgar Allan Poe. If you read his stories, they can either go really somber, suspenseful, action-driven, horror, like, or they can be just like a plain-out narration without emotion, and they still have some effect to them. That is a really difficult thing to achieve as a writer.
I'm going to have to agree for the simple fact that generally when it comes to a story where I can put my own spin on it, I enjoy doing it more because I get more into it. I am generally more into stories that allow me to do essentially whatever I want with them.
Yeah.
As far as whatever tone that is being set, or whether the story is being more gruff and drawn out, or whether it's being more suspenseful, or whether it's being more action or fast-paced. But at the same time, I also like stories from different perspectives than normal.
Yeah.
So, like stories from, I said this last time, the perspective of the monster. I love stories like that. If you haven't heard Business is Business yet, I cannot stress this enough. Go listen to it. Because I had an absolute blast narrating it.
I don't know, dude. Our most recent, the one we dropped today, the Watchtower 1 video. I mean, the way you were reading that was, I was listening to that today, and I'd have to say that it resembles the overall mood of how you read Business is Business.
I just kept... I did a similar thing.
It really reflected. I could see similarities in how you were building the story. And once it hit its climax, I mean, it was like a blast from the past almost.
Well, wait.
Very nice.
Thank you. I don't mean to cut you off during that. What I was trying to do with that was dependent on how I was visualizing the story myself while I was reading it. And the more I read, the more I started perceiving the character as more of a Chris Redfield type from Resident Evil. So as I kept going along with the story and reading through it, I just progressively got more and more gruff with the voice until it started reaching its final conclusion, where the voice just stuck at that point for the longest time. Which generally, I believe it was either once they first breached the door, or once they first started seeing the creatures that were on board Watchtower 1. Which, it was a little confusing for me with the actual title of Watchtower 1. Because I ended up making the thumbnail for it before I read the story. Because I skimmed the first couple paragraphs of the story, and I was like, okay, I get the drill. I'm going to make the thumbnail now, so I don't have to do it while it's processing.
Talking about hyperfocus, huh?
Yeah, right. So I ended up making the thumbnail, and then once I completed narrating the story and had it processing in the file format, I realized that I would have to redo the thumbnail because the original photo that I got for it was of an actual fire guard tower instead of the actual quote-unquote Watchtower 1, which was an oil rig.
Yep.
So I was like, well, I'm gonna have to go back and look for an oil rig. But we already had an oil rig photo in our previous videos from the I Work on an Oil Rig series. So what I ended up doing is going for the tone of the story during the entire time, the environmental tone of the story, which was in the middle of a thunderstorm. So I went back and found a picture of a thunderstorm and then used that as the image instead. Because I originally started looking at photos for Blackhawks, but I didn't find any that I actually liked. So I defaulted to the environmental tone, which is what I'll end up doing for a lot of these. If I can't find a photo that I want directly of it, like the initial photo, which a lot of times I do, surprisingly, then usually I'll pull up something else that happened in the story instead of an actual setting. So instead of the actual setting being an oil rig, I took the setting of the environment, which was a constant thunderstorm throughout the whole story.
And I think it was fitting.
I thought so. Either way, it fits enough to the story to work. I thought about placing more effects in it as far as the audio goes, for like a pitter-patter of rain as the story was going, and then while they were inside, having that be muffled. But that would have been a lot more work, and it wouldn't have gone out as early today if I did that. So I figured they'd probably just want it now, then wait for me to play around with effects for the longest time.
Well, you get surprised. Sometimes the quality of effects, even if it means waiting a little bit longer, tends to pay off over speediness.
Oh, for sure. That's definitely what I did with The Deepest Part of the Ocean is Not Empty. Both parts 1 and 2, specifically 2 more, because I put more effects in number 2. But what brought that on is when I was reading part 1, and I think this is where I started really going into the effects and sound effects, was part 1 of The Deepest Part of the Ocean is Not Empty. And the reason for that is emulating sounds in the story that I knew I could not reproduce. So I started looking at other effects that I could use for that instead as a supplement. So the monster roar. I've tried that in the past, and it really just comes out as goofy. So I wanted to try and set it for a more serious setting. So I tried to find the best thing I could on the YouTube library, which the YouTube library, very extensive. Whoever attributes to it, thank you, it does help. But a lot of them didn't fit what I was looking for. So what I ended up doing was finding one that kind of worked, and then splicing it, elongating it, and then editing it to actually fit what I wanted. So that took a lot of time doing, but I think it definitely paid off in the end as far as that story goes. And I plan to continue doing stuff like that when needed.
That story reminded me of, I don't know if you have watched this movie. I can't remember the name exactly, but it's with the actress with the Twilight movies.
That's not a good sign.
I know, that's usually what you would think, but it's actually a really good movie. Actually, I'm looking for the name right now. Give me a second. But the idea is basically the same principle of Explorer of the Ocean. It's an investigation station that has, literally carved too deep, and they reach a point where they think they have reached a pocket of geothermal energy, and it bursts. In reality, it was a natural chamber that was holding a series of creatures. And it has an interesting twist at the end, but I'm not sure if I should reveal because the movie is not that old. It's only 2 years old, which is really interesting. And the whole premise of Deep Explorer of the Ocean is by far not the same, but the concept is, and I really liked it. And I think that if people that have enjoyed that story, that creepypasta, that will be a good movie to watch, just because of the concept and the setting. And yes, even though it was portrays the main chick of Twilight, she actually gives a really good performance in the movie. If I could only remember the name.
I feel like what you're describing is essentially the aquatic form of Cabin in the Woods.
No. Because the movie never... the movie knows what it is, but because it knows what it is, it takes serious itself just enough. They know how to play it out, because just the idea of having a research station over 10 miles deep means God knows where trench, and having people able to walk on the waters, on the water floor, on the ocean floor at that depth, is just they know they are touching on the sci-fi, and they embrace that fact without going to the ridiculousness of it. And they it's just enough to keep yourself centered and serious. And it has that trope that we mentioned before of the monster that you don't know, the monster you cannot see. So it plays out really well because, well, the ocean floor lends itself to be a dark, scary place filled with God knows what.
Oh, of course, the ocean floor is probably one of the most terrifying things in our modern day, because when you look at Take the game series Subnautica, for example. The game itself is not listed as a horror game.
No.
It doesn't list itself as part of the horror genre. It's a creative survival game.
Yeah.
However, the game, by nature, going into the darkness of the ocean for the unknown, is one of the most terrifying aspects you will ever come across. And you don't think about it when you first download the game. You're just like, oh, going around in the water, swimming around, collecting stuff and building stuff. That's really cool. And then it's like, oh, well, I need these resources that are down deeper. That's fine. I'll just make this to go down deeper. And then you start going down deeper, and you start thinking, why are my lights not touching the ground? And then you start seeing things swimming in that darkness, just glancing past your light. And it starts bringing in the fear aspect of it. And you're like, oh, wait, this is a horror game. And then you hear it roar, and then you try and flee as fast as possible.
So I found the movie name. It's called Underwater. It came out in 2020. That's why I'm not spoiling anything more out of it. I think I said more than I should. But if you look at the trailer, you might enjoy it. And if you like that concept, if you enjoy the story, like that we have mentioned a couple times now, this is definitely a good choice to watch. Like, it's not a difficult movie to watch. It's not super complicated. It's not like whatever you want to say. Like, it's a nice, short, condensed movie that is good within itself. Right? It's no Oscar winner by any chance, but yeah.
Okay, I'll have to give that a watch.
Like, if you do give it a watch tonight, like, I'll bet you the moment you finish watching it, you're gonna message me and gonna be like, okay, get it now, because it was good.
Well, it also brings in other concepts, because a lot of my inspiration for, like, D&D games, as far as, like, Dungeons & Dragons, I like to experiment with it a lot.
Yep.
And I think I have enough of a grasp of the system itself where I can make it malleable.
Mm-hmm.
So I've ran horror games out of Dungeons & Dragons by altering it a bit, set in, like, modern-day times. I've also done it with the space game, as you know, which if I did something like that, it would probably start giving me ideas on having, like, that underwater type of game, because the mechanics in it would be fairly similar to the space game as far as, like, travel and everything. However, it starts bringing in different types of concepts for me, because, like, when it comes to movies like Cabin in the Woods, Cabin in the Woods brings in a bunch of different variations that were possible that weren't made. So once they find the cabin in the woods, they go to the basement, and they start seeing all of the different types of artifacts. Depending on which artifact they mess with is what causes whichever monster or group of monsters to go after them.
Mm-hmm.
And since they picked the one artifact, and it stuck with that throughout the rest of the movie until they started going further into the movie and discovering all the actual things that were lying about, that's all they had to deal with. It brings in another aspect of, you could make another game, like a D&D game, based off of Cabin in the Woods, following the same type of storyline in the earlier game. But once they get to the basement and see all those artifacts, that's where it could go completely off script.
That could be such a hassle to set up.
Oh,
so
yeah.
What is there? There's like over 1,000 trinkets, artifacts, whatever you want to call them, in that basement.
I'd say there's between 100 to 200.
Dude, there's so much more, because you saw the scene whenever it like shifts through all the cubes of all the monsters.
Right.
I mean, there's thousands of them.
Well, here's the easiest part of it when looking in terms of Dungeons & Dragons. The monster manual itself has a wide variety of monsters in it. All that you would need to do is set up artifacts to represent each monster and throw it in the basement. And then whatever artifact they mess with, you can pull up a numbers table and see how many of that type of creature it summons.
You can also determine the strength of that monster too, if you really wanted to.
Oh, you could edit it however you wished. There's also you could
based on how they roll. If they roll like a low number, that'd be like the stronger the monster is.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, there's also like you could change their personalities for the monsters themselves too. So if they summon like, oh, well, they found a ceramic spriggan leaf and they shattered it, it summons a horde of pixies. You could also change those pixies to act more like hags than actual pixies, to give it that darker tone. It's just essentially putting the Grimm Brother filter over any type of monster combination in the monster manual.
There's some really crazy things you can do with monsters. I mean, you can ask Chronicler about how it turned what would be a normal shadow demon that tend to be like they struggle but not that bad into an actual fully fledged Shadow Lord, and how fun of a time he had with it.
Oh, I had a great time. There's also Harbinger, you missed last Saturday's game.
Yeah, don't remind me about it.
Essentially giving you a touch-up, because this would be the best place to do it, right? Because it was a hard one-shot that I did.
Yeah.
I didn't base that one off of a creepypasta. Instead, I based it around a popular internet monster that's been going around that people that are hardcore D&D enthusiasts might not know of if they stick to the books, but if, like, they listen to YouTube D&D channels and stuff, they'll understand what it is immediately.
Mm-hmm.
It's the False Hydra, if you've heard of it.
Yep.
Essentially, what it does is it's like any basic Hydra in terms of appearance, except it has human heads, and it's pale in color. It's white. It also sings, and if you hear the Hydra's song, then you forget about its existence. It's a lot like the Silence in the Doctor Who series. You forget that they exist the moment you look away from them.
Mm-hmm.
With the Hydra, the moment you are corrupted by its song, you completely forget about it and any aspect related to it, and your brain just pieces those parts together for it to make sense to you. So the missing pieces don't even come up to your mind because your brain just pieces everything else together to make it work. So what I ended up doing is, with the False Hydra, I had them coming in to investigate a group of 3 towns. Within these 3 towns, there were a bunch of different types of paranormal sightings, and I had them go in as paranormal investigators. The majority of the requests that they got from in town were of like Bigfoot sightings of mole people, alien abduction, abduction of family members, people going missing, and something that was very common in all of the reports but wasn't addressed by anyone was missing memories. There was missing time. And the players picked up on it pretty quickly as far as like missing time. They caught that there was an amnesia issue going around, but they couldn't pinpoint what it was because it was a reoccurring thing with every single occurrence. But luckily, none of my players had heard of it before. So what essentially happened for the majority of the game is I gaslit them on what memories they knew.
Mm-hmm. I remember the message saying that gaslighting wasn't part of it.
Oh yeah. Well, they kept saying, "Oh, well, we did this, and I was like, "Roll a wisdom save." Like, okay, and I did it. And it's like, you remember it's in this? And I'm like, but what about? Yeah, what about it? I'm like, oh. Or they'd be like, "Oh, well, it happened in this order," and I just roll a wisdom save.
So
okay.
It was similar to what I was doing, like when I was gaslighting you the moment you exited the tower after defeating the Demon Lord. You were walking around all nicely and just like, yeah, you see no mountains. Oh, it's just far away. You keep walking north. You walk for another couple hours and you still see no mountains. Actually, the grass is greener than you know it to be. Just like you keep pushing that idea of like you know nothing the truth. Or what you're seeing the truth. And what you know is true.
There was one part of the session that I had them driving around for about 45 minutes to an hour in game. And the entire time they were arguing with each other. And while this was going on, I kept getting more increasingly snappy with the gaslighting of the memories and messing with them. And soon they started realizing things started appearing in their work van as they were driving and arguing, and then other things were disappearing. And they were like, what the hell is going on? So they started to notice timestamps. They were essentially like checks and bills and things from getting gas and all that. Because they're like, I look at the mileage. It's like, okay. And they have a conversation or whatever. And it's like, I look at the mileage again. And it was entirely different, like far from what it was before. Like, oh, okay, what's going on? So they start looking at receipts. They start looking for any clues. And one of the players decided, I'm going to start writing the date and time on a piece of paper after every conversation. And they're like, I'm going to look up the date and time after every conversation and write it down. It's like, okay, go for it. So they started doing that and realized 6 days had passed since they had started driving at this point. And they're like, uh-oh, something's really wrong. And they decided, I kept altering their direction that they were going in terms of, we need to go to this person's house for this claim that they made or this email that they sent us with their sighting of Bigfoot. And it's like, oh, well, we were headed to this person who was citing the mole people, right? And then they forget, and it's like, oh, we're going to this person who had this happen to them. And they get to that person's house, and they're like, oh, you're finally back. And they're like, Nani the fuck? Like, this is the first time we met. And you're like, uh-oh. No, it's not. And I started describing as they were driving and heading there. They started seeing like fewer and fewer vehicles in the roads. And fewer people in town and things like that. So by the time we called in the last session, they discovered the false Hydra. They got pulled into an underground bunker that was soundproofed. And because one of the guys that made the request was a doomsday prepper. So they got to his house and he was just like, I know exactly what's been going on because I'm a straight up conspiracy theorist and I don't trust anything.
What's the difference between news and a conspiracy theory?
A doomsday prepper and a conspiracy theorist?
No. What's the difference between news and a conspiracy theory?
Between news and a conspiracy theory?
Yep.
The news is backed up by media.
A 30-minute time lapse.
Ah, fair. But I had them in a soundproof room looking out with essentially a periscope out of the guy's yard, and they saw the visage of the false Hydra, and it had grown very large. When in terms of the actual game, they did actually see the false Hydra before, not its entirety, but they saw parts of it, like maybe a head or two. But very soon after, they'd forget about it. I love the false Hydra. It's great. But I do thoroughly enjoy running horror games. I thought of actually running a horror campaign, essentially with the same premise of like a paranormal investigator type company. Where everyone goes out on these missions and everything to go hunt down this paranormal stuff. I had them start at level 3, and I told them that their previous paranormal investigations had to do with a specter and a were-rat.
The fuck is a were-rat?
Literally just a werewolf instead of being a wolf. It's a rat.
Yeah.
How disappointing would that be to be a were-rat?
Well, actually, they're pretty tough to deal with.
The worst species are vast and varied. The were-rats, funny enough, tend to be one of the most common ones, but also one of the toughest bastards to beat.
Yeah, because there's a lot of them. They reproduce fast.
Yeah, were-hyenas are like close second.
Well, there's like jackal wares, which people always confuse as lycanthropes when they're not. But in terms of actual lycanthropy in D&D, there's the were-rat, were-bear, were-tiger,
were-hyena,
of course the werewolf.
Were-bear you mentioned?
Yeah. Which they're all of their alignments vary depending on which species of lycanthrope they are. Like a werewolf is going to be neutral evil, I believe.
Aren't they supposed to be neutral? Fully neutral?
I don't think they're fully neutral. I thought they were neutral evil.
Or is lycanthropes who are fully neutral?
Lycanthrope is a classification, not an actual species. Yeah, werewolves are chaotic evil.
Okay.
But werewolf being chaotic evil, a werebear is lawful good.
Mm-hmm.
So a werebear in D&D is straight up Smokey the Bear.
Unless you set up his forest on fire.
Then he's going to smoke you out. So werebears, they're a lot like druids, to be honest. They live out in the woods. They essentially protect their forests. If they find someone committing acts of evil within their woods, they take them down. And they're less likely to actually murder them if they're sentient beings and can be imprisoned.
They are quite close to... what's the name of them? Man, I had it on the tip of the tongue.
They're like forest rangers.
Yeah, they are quite close to fearbolgs.
Yeah, furbolgs. They're like forest rangers, to be honest.
Yep. I mean, fearbolgs are also forest rangers. But...
Yeah, but furbolgs generally aren't aggressive. Furbolgs instead of being aggressive, furbolgs essentially bully you into leaving their forest.
Yep.
They essentially pull pranks on you, try and scare you out, things like that. They're not big on direct confrontation.
If they need to get aggressive, though.
And that's another big change in 5e with furbolgs. The original furbolgs didn't look like how they look like currently in 5e.
I think they look more like beast-like than they do now.
No, they look like people. The original furbolgs were big, hairy people. They were humans.
Like the memory that I had of fearbolgs was very similar to what shifters are now. Very animal-like, furry people.
Well, I hate to tell you, but you're wrong.
Maybe. That's just a picture that came to our mind.
The original furbolg was a hairier human, just bigger, like a smaller giant. And then once 5e came out with furbolgs, it's specifically a tribe of furbolg that got lost in the Feywild. It's not an actual full-on species of furbolg. The entire furbolg race did not change into that. It's just a specific tribe of furbolgs that had been caught in the Feywild.
Apparently, we bored Overseer to the point where he fell asleep and reconnected, but now has woken up and reconnected to Paul.
That's probably the push-to-talk he's dealing with.
More than likely, because he is yet to respond for a solid half an hour.
We put him on push-to-talk just in case his furnace kicked on, and then he just doesn't talk. Feels bad, man.
Oh yeah.
So back to D&D. Because honestly,
kill them all.
This is generally what we talk about for the most part is Dungeons and Dragons.
You would think that we would have no more Dungeons and Dragons topics to talk about at this point.
Well, it's funny because Dungeons and Dragons, it will give a little insight to the actual channel here. Dungeons and Dragons is what brought us to making creepypastas, as far as like narrating them. Because I used to do horror one-shots based off of creepypastas. And while I was doing them, the Overseer started telling me that I should do actual narrations because he said I was good at it. So we joked around for it for a while, talking about, oh, well, what would the channel name be and all this. And then one day, at about 3 a.m., I decided, you know what? I'm going to record one. So I recorded it at really late. And then throughout the night, I learned how to edit really badly. It was a terrible edit. And then I started sending it to a couple of very close people and asking them to give it a listen and tell me what they thought. And it was a lot of positivity from them. Just like, okay, cool. Maybe I'll give it a shot. So I started posting it, and then after about 2, maybe 3 weeks, we had 14 subscribers, and then a few weeks later, we were at like 40 something. A few weeks after that, started going up to like 80, and then breaking the 100 mark, which I believe we did. That's around the time we did the interview with Dezombified's channel, and then from there, we've just continued to grow. Our point from 200 to 300 was only like 2 weeks in between, which was our fastest growth rate. And then from there, we've been building up from 300. We hit 400, and now, fairly soon, hopefully, we'll hit 500.
Yeah, it's impressive to like I know that no means is quite a big number, but when you're like starting and doing this for the first time ever, it's really huge to like be reaching such a number.
Generally, I'm honestly more proud of our viewership than our actual subscriptions, because we get a decent amount of viewership, and then of course we took the month off, and then our viewership hasn't been as good, but it's still been really decent.
Yeah, it's been picking up.
So I am thankful for that.
Hey guys, so the recording bot that we're using on our voice channel kind of cut out and started making us sound all choppy and robotic. So I had to cut out about 9 minutes of audio, but either way, we just reverted to talking back to D&D. So enjoy what I was able to piece back together. Thanks.
Everyone should play D&D.
Everybody really should at least try to. It's very difficult. A lot more than what you think it would be. There's so much more tactics, maths,
Creativity.
which is astounding. There's probably more strategy that goes into actually playing D&D than there is more, let alone making like entire world for it. Like, it's just insane. I don't know how they do it. Whoever thought of that was just really fucking bored and had a lot of ideas.
Very Gygax and his group of friends.
Nerd.
No, it definitely does take a lot of work into it, but at the same time, I honestly put like Dungeons and Dragons stuff on my job resumes, which have actually really helped, because it helps boost teamwork as far as cooperating within a team, since it's a cooperative game. It helps boost creativity. It helps with imagination, thinking of different things, thinking outside of the box. It helps in terms of, I don't want to say laziness, but it's that same Bill Gates mindset of hire lay people to do a job because they'll figure out the fastest, most effective way to get done.
Exactly.
It has a lot of positives that it gets to it. Yeah, it takes time. It only is a big time consumer, but one, it's extremely fun to do. It's a controlled environment to do a lot of social experiments in if you do have social issues. So one of the things that I'm going to bring up is it's been used in the past, and I think still today, as an instrument in child therapy for children that have autism. They can use D&D as a sort of controlled environment to test out different social interactions and different social cues to see how people would react to it, which I think is really awesome.
It's such a weird byproduct of just making a game.
Well, that's the thing. Like, you make something, right? And you start giving it out to the public. The public, of course, a lot of them use it for what it's for. But then you'll, of course, have a bunch of people using it for something that it was not made for at all, but it still works for. It's all about human ingenuity. And I think the fact that they use that as a social tool to help children progress is awesome. It's amazing.
It really is. It really is, honestly.
Everyone should play D&D.
At least try it once. Find a friend. I'm sure you got some loser friend who you know, like at least heard of that plays D&D or know somebody who does play, and trying to develop a character is really going to test your creativity skills, because you got to come up with backgrounds and you got to roll your stats and you got to determine their end goal basically of life. I mean, you're really restructuring an entire person from beginning to end.
That's another thing.
It really unleashes a lot of unknown creativity in yourself, and I would say choose whatever first comes to your mind, because that'll probably be your best idea. That's something you could probably most relate to.
Oh yeah.
Character anyway. After your first character dies, which it will,
if you have a good DM.
If you have a good DM, they'll die. Which sounds very strange, but just trust me, they'll die, and you'll appreciate it, and you'll be able to build a better character based off prior experience. Because whenever you start new after your first character, you're not starting from scratch, you're starting from experience. And that can help you build more.
You have a better baseline for the type of thing that you're going to need. You have a better understanding of what you're going to need. If you have a really good DM, you won't have a first character that survives through everything. And yeah, it does sound really odd to say, but it helps build a lot for you in terms of creative writing skills, which is present especially in modern day D&D. Because I started with 2nd edition. I started with old school D&D, and back then it was basically just a war game. There was still RP to it, but not a lot. You essentially said, oh, well, we go into town and we buy these supplies. Okay, now we head through the forest. And then when you head into the forest, that's when you actually start doing your dungeon crawl and running into things and interacting with them and everything. But now it's straight up an RPG world where anything can happen. There's
anything. You can roll to fart if you want to.
Straight up.
There is, like, anything I once mashed to get out of jail.
Yeah, that did happen.
And I got out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the guard went in to beat you with baton. So you stopped and you took that moment to flee and lock them in the jail cell.
Got off and away.
Got off on 2 accounts.
Pretty sure I ran out into the streets naked.
You did. You definitely did.
My character was stupid, but God was he determined.
But after that entire situation and going into another game, you came in more prepared. You realized, oh, well, that wasn't the kind of character that I necessarily want to play.
Yeah, because you let me read my stats in it. Because originally my character was rolled. It was
really stupid.
Really stupid. I mean, like, he was just like a box of rocks was Einstein in comparison. And he wasn't strong. He was really like your most base character of poor stats. I mean, just not good. And then I got to re-roll entering a new game using the same character, and I think I rolled pretty moderate stats.
Yeah, pretty decent.
Like, I was able to coherently think for myself. That was pretty nice.
Make better choices.
Make better choices. I didn't fight everybody that looked at me, and I didn't die by a level 15 wizard at a level 1.
Don't attack shopkeepers.
Don't attack shopkeepers, please don't.
Generally.
Especially when they're a wizard.
Oh yeah, especially if it's my games. Like, this is a shopkeeper that owns a potion shop. They are obviously a magic user, and they're old, who has their own potion shop. You really want to mess with them at level 1? Like, the wizard knocked him out of the store through the window with an upcasted gust of wind. And that's all it took.
I survived, but I know a level 15 doesn't sound like it would be much of anything. But
the max is 20.
Yeah, the max is 20, so you really gotta understand that level 15 is like a baby versus like a professional punter in football who can kick like a 70-yard field goal.
It's essentially pitting.
Against the baby.
It's essentially pitting a middle schooler up against Mike Tyson in a ring. It doesn't turn out very well for the middle schooler.
The middle schooler's getting fucked up.
Or Mike Tyson, because he bit off a kid's ear.
It wasn't a kid, it was a referee.
Well, in this hypothetical, it would be him biting off the kid's ear. Everybody have a plan until they get punched in the face.
Don't get fucked up.
I love Mike Tyson. He's great.
Did you see him eat a whole handful of shrooms on Jake Paul's podcast?
Oh, yeah. Well, there was also, he had his own cartoon, Mike Tyson. He had his Comedy Central cartoon, and in it, he was very self-aware of the jokes made about him. And he portrayed very, what's the word for it? Exaggerated forms of it. He portrayed very exaggerated forms of the commonly made jokes about him, and they were hilarious. Dude's got a great sense of humor, which, seeing a lot of his interviews, I was just like, man, this guy really hates reporters. But then after watching his cartoon series, I was just like, okay, yeah, I get it. He just hates reporters.
That's fair. That's pretty fair, actually.
I love Mike Tyson.
Alright, so chronically, before we go, because I gotta jump off here in a minute, to revert back about, I don't know, about 30, 40 minutes ago when I asked my original question. It seems to be a pretty common thing.
I hate it.
Because I'll ask a question, you guys will go off on a tangent. I'm not going to interrupt it because it's kind of interesting. And then like 30, 40 minutes goes by.
When the tangent dies down.
Yeah, when it dies down, then I'm like, I asked a question, and I never answered it. So, to answer the question of what the fuck was my question? What was it? A preferred author?
Preferred author and their whichever story.
Okay. So my preferred author is an author named what is it? DC Jacobian, and he is the author of The Art of the Wendigo. And I really like that story. It's a pretty nice story. It's still going. I think he's only got 3 chapters out right now. And it starts off as like pretty much just a horror story, and then it evolves into almost like an SCP story, almost.
We've talked to that author before, haven't we?
Through Reddit.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
But yeah, because we're gonna have another narrator help us narrate his first chapter.
Yeah, we still have the audio files from it. We just need to actually do it.
Oh, whoops.
I forget about it like every month, and then once a month I'll recall it and just be like, oh, we should probably do that. And then 5 minutes later, I'm like, all right, what story am I recording?
Yeah, so like, I'm not gonna lie, like, I honestly forgot that we're having somebody else narrate that with us. Huh.
It's one of the people that we were gonna have on today, but they were busy.
Yeah.
Which we won't. We honestly didn't make this to like bring guests on and interview them and everything. This is just us bullshitting, but every once in a while we might bring a guest on. If they're available.
Oh yeah. If they're available, then, great. But if not, it happens.
It definitely do be like that.
But, you threw in that one podcast or not podcast, what was it, Mr. Creepypasta's Tales from the Gas Station?
What do you mean?
Did we link that last time?
No. We linked Mr. Creepypasta's rendition of both, there were two of them. We did the Russian sleeper experiment, the Russian sleep experiment, as well as the accounts from a lonely broadcast station. But if you guys are interested, there is a long-running series on Mr. Creepypasta's channel called Spaghet. It is hours long, hours and hours worth of content. So a lot of it's
$8 now.
Yeah, it's pretty funny in a lot of parts. But it's definitely an interesting series. I've listened to quite a lot of it. I've listened to about 6 or 7 hours of it. And it's definitely entertaining. I'll give it that much. It's a lot of variation in it. It's constantly shifting and changing from the base setting, but it maintains that base setting tone. And I really enjoy that.
We'll just link that anyway, because
Yeah.
And, I'll send you the link for DC Jacobian's The Art of the Wendigo. Probably just chapter 1 or whichever ones I can find.
Okay.
And we'll just throw those in the link and you guys can read it. And actually, Mr. Creeps did a narration of the first chapter.
Oh, okay.
We might throw that in there. I don't know, let's see if I can find it.
Yeah. Well, in the future, maybe we can get back in contact with the author. We can probably see if we can do a narration of all the stories. And if we do that, then we're probably going to ask multiple authors to help us out with it. Or not authors, but narrators.
There's a lot of parts just in the first chapter. I think there's even more in the second and third. I think there's like 5 extra, 10 extra, something. There's a lot of people in it. I know that.
Right. There's like, I think there's 3 or 4 parts in the first chapter. Because there's the narrator, there's the...
It's first person.
Right.
So you got narrator, you got the wife, 3 kids, that guy. You might be like 7 people in.
Okay.
8. And then there's like probably another like 5 or 6 in the second one. Man, that's a lot of people.
Yeah, that is a lot of people.
It's like fucking Harry Potter.
Well,
there's too many people in Harry Potter. But
just don't decide to give a character multiple dicks after the story's already written. Dobby has 3 dicks.
Shut up. No, he does not.
It's a joke about J.K. Rowling changing shit after she already made her stories.
She's like, this person's gay, this person's black. Whatever.
Yeah, whenever she was in that mad dash. Yeah, when she fell off the deep end in that mad dash to stay relevant.
Yeah, I mean, like, she didn't even have to do that. I still love watching Harry Potter.
I mean, this might be a bit of a... I don't like Harry Potter, okay? I'm gonna say it.
So, next podcast, we're gonna do a Harry Potter like and dislike deal, and then we're probably gonna branch off into D&D and Lord of the Rings, because I don't know why those two just get compared due to time relevance.
Because they're both superior to Harry Potter.
I love all 3.
I like 2 of those 3. Also, this might piss some people off. Star Wars sucks, and so does Star Trek.
So bad. Star Trek is like boomer Star Wars.
It really is. And then, okay, so Star Trek is boomer Star Wars. Star Wars is edgy boomer Star Trek. And then Harry Potter is just like what a boomer would think how magic works.
No. Harry Potter is better Percy Jackson.
Yeah. Well, I will say one of my favorite meme-fueled comparisons is that Harry Potter is just British Naruto.
I don't like this comparison.
Harry Potter is just British Naruto. Instead of using scrolls and jutsus, they use wands and spells.
Jesus Christ. Alright, I gotta get off here.
Alright, take it easy, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Alright, I'm the Overseer. the bringer of your stories, contact me on our subreddit, which is r/creepyspaghetyt. You can just message that profile and I'll be there to answer. If you have any stories that you'd like to be narrated or just to be looked over, I can review them and let you know what we think.
There's also our Twitter.
Twitter? What is our Twitter handle?
Same thing as our Reddit.
So, okay. So, if you'd like to connect with us on Twitter as well, our Twitter handle is at SpaghetYT. That is SpaghetYT.
Which, if you follow the Twitter, it will probably notify you of our video releases faster than YouTube does, since YouTube's notification system is poo-poo.
We actually don't get it till about 8 to 20 some odd hours later, but with our YouTube is connected with our Twitter, so as soon as we post on YouTube, we immediately get a notification from Twitter.
Yeah, so if you follow us on Twitter, you're going to see our releases faster. If you follow the Reddit, that's honestly the best way to send us your stories if you do want them narrated. We do follow certain guidelines as far as what stories we do read. Generally, submissions for stories will have to at least meet a 10-minute requirement. And it will also have to be, well, a horror setting or something related. If it's just... We had a couple stories that were just duds that had really nothing to do with the horror genre. Like, one of them was just a dude screaming at an interstate outside of a dude's apartment at like 3 a.m. That was it.
Yeah, that's very strange. Your abstract stories are not recommended to be submitted to us. If we have something creepypasta related, like something around a internet created monster or an SCP or just a very actual scary situation involving something paranormal, that's more our river that we swim in.
Yeah, that's more our speed. Anything has to do with paranormal creatures, hell, even deities. We'll read those.
Those are great. I recommend some D&D stories if you got them up your sleeve.
Eldritch stuff. We are big fans of eldritch entities.
Our personas are actually eldritch gods, so fuck with me.
I wouldn't say mine's a god. I would say mine's an ideology brought to life.
I mean, I don't know. Ooh. They could be considered like titans over like deities or gods.
Well, that's the thing. We'd be, I think, not maybe full-on eldritch horrors, but I think something of the eldritch nature.
Of eldritch descent.
Yeah. Eldritch adjacent.
You know what? Chronicler, me and you, we're going to work on some backstory. So we do this podcast bi-weekly. So I personally am going to work on my lore. And we'll message Harbinger to work on his. And
try and get some other people on too.
We'll try to get some other people on. We can better explain ourselves to kind of... I said we were going to do this last time, but we didn't, because I didn't think about it. But...
Surprise, we forget a lot.
Sugar. But yeah, we'll work on that eventually, probably. Maybe. It's a strong possibility. Maybe not.
Strong possibility. We'll set up a note and then probably forget about it, but it'll be fine. But yeah, we will see you guys next time. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, fiends. And remember, we are darkness.